Hey guys, how you doing? Welcome back to another Destiny 2 build video. Today I got a Shadebinder Warlock build for you guys that, in all honesty, is absolutely cracked. We're going to be building this around Ager's scepter that with the right fragments and mods set up, you don't even need to worry about using your turret to freeze everything that comes your way. And with Mantle of Battle Harmony, we're going to be generating so much super that we're going to have no problem keeping Ager's scepter's damage buff up most of the time, melting pretty much all of the enemies like butter. To be honest with you, this is a build that's going to be able to carry us through all levels of content, no matter what the difficulty is. We've got huge crowd control potential, great damage mitigation, and a fair amount of DPS to boot. But before we get into it, if you like this video, hit the thumbs up button, and if you want to see more, don't forget to hit subscribe. So first up, let's go over our skills. We're going to be making use of Healing Rift. We don't need to use Empowering Rift because at this point it's just going to be overkill. We're going to be getting a lot of our damage increase from our mods and our exotics. Healing Rift is used just to give us a little bump in resilience and keep us fighting longer, and also to hit in those panic situations when we really need the heals. Melee is standard, and for Grenade we're going to be using Cold Snap. Both of these we're going to use to kickstart the freezing cycle, which we're going to make the most of with Ager's and chain that on and on and on. We'll go over the fragments and aspects soon, as well as mods, and you'll be able to see just how quick we can clear a crowd. So for our first aspect, we're using Ice Flare bolts. Shattering frozen targets sends Seekers out that attach to nearby enemies and freeze them as well. This is a really strong aspect in combination with Ager's scepter, as the whole premise of the weapon is freezing, shattering, and doing AoE damage. You'll notice just shattering one frozen enemy will start a chain that spreads out and out and out, eventually freezing a whole mob and just wiping them out in an instant. For our next aspect, we're using Glacial Harvest. This is another one that pairs really well with Ager's scepter, as freezing targets create stasis crystals, which we're going to be doing all the time. You'll see later how this ties into our mods and makes us insanely powerful. For our fragments, first we're going to be using Whisper of Rending. This increases damage of kinetic weapons to frozen targets. Even though Ager's scepter is stasis, it counts as a kinetic weapon, so freezing targets, which we're going to be doing all the time with it, is going to increase the damage of the weapon itself, creating a never-ending chain of increased damage. Next we have Whisper of Rime. Picking up stasis shards gives us an overshield, as we're going to be generating a never-ending stream of these stasis shards. It's going to keep us topped off on overshield pretty much all of the time. Third, we're using Whisper of Bonds. This in combination with Mantle of Battle Harmony is going to generate a lot of super and allow us to get plenty of use out of the Scepter's exotic catalyst, which, consuming our super, increases the damage of this weapon. Getting kills with the weapon is going to feed back into that super, allowing us to keep that perk up for a really long time, as long as enemies keep coming at us. Lastly, we have Whisper of Rime. This is going to make stasis shards track towards our location. This is what's going to make it really easy to keep up our overshield, as well as activating our elemental well mods, which we'll get into later. Now for our weapon, if you hadn't guessed it already, obviously Ager's scepter. This thing is powerful on its own, but the thing that really sets it over the edge is its catalyst. If you haven't got this, it's really worth grinding it out, because when our super's full, we're able to hold R, reload, consume our super slowly, and that gives this weapon increased damage for a prolonged time. For our exotic armor piece, we're going to be using Mantle of Battle Harmony. This has a lot of synergy with Ager's scepter, as getting kills that match your elemental subclass increases your super, hence why when we're using Ager's scepter's catalyst to consume our super, every time we get a kill with it, we're going to feed back into that, allowing us to keep it up for longer. Now for our mod setup, first up we're using elemental shards. This means the shards that we create with Ager's scepter and freezing enemies are going to count as stasis elemental wells. This has heaps of synergy with our current setup, as we're going to be generating shards all of the time like stated, and with our other mods coming up we'll be able to keep them procced pretty much constantly. Next up we have Font of Might. We're picking up a stasis shard. It's going to give us increased weapon damage for a limited time. This is just feeding back into basically giving Ager's scepter a permanent damage increase, which is just going to make it even easier to chew through all the enemies that come our way. Next up we have Font of Wisdom. When picking up an elemental well, we're going to be topping off our intellect, which is going to allow us to just basically put all our stats into other areas and not have to worry about using up that expensive mod to run high intellect. And last we have Elemental Time Dilation. This is going to allow Font of Might and Font of Wisdom's limited time effects to stack on each other as long as we continue to pick up stasis shards, giving us these boosts permanently as long as we hold down the trigger and keep freezing enemies. Well, that's it for this build. As you can see, there's a lot of synergy. The only thing really limiting you with this build is running out of ammo, which isn't going to be too much of a problem as long as you're running trace rifle ammo finders. You'll find that you're just melting through everything insanely quick, keeping everything frozen, and there's not much that can do anything to you, really. If you liked this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up, and if you want to see more, don't forget to subscribe. But before we go, I had a bit of a hard time getting this video out, a little bit of a creative block. I'm finding it a little bit hard at the moment, just with there being no more content really until December, and actually getting out any builds or content that I feel that passionate about. I've kind of been thinking about what else I could do. I'm kind of leaning towards a bit more creative stuff. I'd like to do maybe some weapon concepts, some character concepts, something just to be a bit more creative, maybe get into some lore a little bit, or maybe get into doing a deep dive around different creatures' anatomy in this game. I'm not too sure yet. I need to have a little bit of a think about it. If you guys have any ideas or suggestions, just let me know what you'd like to see. I'd really appreciate it. Just, I don't know, give me a good idea on what kind of content I want to go forward with from here on in. I'll still keep doing build videos, but I'm just going to hold off for a little bit until we get some new stuff coming in the game. Ideally the December launch of 30th anniversary, when we're going to get Galahorn and I can't remember what else, but I don't know, that'll just get the creative juices flowing a little bit, where I can kind of come up with some builds that maybe we haven't seen before. It kind of seems like everything's been done to death 1,000 times now. Yes, I don't know, tell me what you want to see, I really appreciate it, and as always...
Ta-ta! And farewell!